Good morning. My name is Dan Noone. I'm the CEO of G2 Goldfields. G2 Goldfields is listed on the Toronto Stock Exchange Venture under the symbol GTWO. G2 Goldfields has a high-grade gold discovery in Guyana. It has an initial resource of about 1.2 million ounces at 9 grams. So we're continuing to explore down there. It's early days, and basically this year we think there's a lot of good news to come and a lot more answers to be discovered.
Dan, thank you for the introduction. Good to talk to you again. The last time I spoke to you, we did a kind of a technical run through, and Boaz and Wade was on the call with us. It's been a hell of a year. You put out a resource in April. The gold market went to hell in a handbasket. Every junior and its grandmother hit rock bottom. We've started 2023 with a bit of a bang. You've had a share price rise. Can you just kind of give us a summary of how last year felt for you, sitting in your hot seat?
Okay, well, basically we got our resource out around late March, early April, the initial numbers, and we've been waiting for that to clear the air and get that out there. At that point, it almost looked like we'd missed the market for raising, but we had a number of investors who'd come to site, and we did do a raising in June of $13.5 million at 60 cents with no warrant. That was basically for large institutions and Patrick himself. So we got that away, and then we kept drilling. So basically, it's been just a story of keep expanding the Oko Main Zone, keep exploring around that to find more ounces, and then we really didn't get much onto the regional exploration along the whole trend, which we'll try to correct this year. But it was there wasn't much reward in the market for the ounces or the assays we're putting out. We put out a lot of good numbers with our drilling, but at the end of the day, just keep storming ahead, and the key to timing's always been there. So we think if we just keep driving ahead, we'll get there. And the start of this year has been good news for us with the gold price going up and a bit of interest coming down the food chain and looking into the juniors who have real discoveries.
You've just taken on Torben Mikkelsen, who's a construction guy. You've taken him on as CEO. Presumably, he's down there to help you kind of coordinate the activities in the field. Does this mean that you're looking at a kind of a early construction? Are you trying to be an explorer because it's going to take the Oko Main Zone to a kind of early production decision?
No, that's not the plan at all. I mean, basically, we brought Torben on because he was at Guiana Goldfields and built that last 60 kilometres of road. He worked for IM Gold over in Suriname on road construction. He was Gran Colombia's construction manager of the Oko-Aremu project. What we needed when you go from just an exploration camp with like, blue tarpaulins and one rig and an excavator, as we need to ramp up, we need to get that organised. So better camp, better maintenance on our machinery. A whole bunch of things need to happen before you can jump to the scale of production which we require moving forward here. And he's certainly very good at that, and we've worked with him a lot. So really, we call it COO, but he's Chief Operating Officer, but the operations are exploration. So we're still definitely in the exploration phase. We're at the stage of trying to see how big this can be. At the end of the day, we don't see ourselves necessarily being the builder here, right? It's not a secret that Reunion's right to the south of us. We can see a big district occurring here, and we think that between Reunion and ourselves, there will actually be a mining company who'll find it extremely attractive to come and buy the whole package. So definitely not moving towards a mining situation.
Your market cap's $140 million or thereabouts Canadian. And your first resource? I know it's the only start. It's only the start, but at Oko you've got about 970,000 ounces of inferred resources, with another 200 in the indicated category, all at good grade. What's the market capitalization of Reunion, and what's their resource kind of at the moment?
Well, they've got a market capitalization of about 450 million. They haven't put a resource out yet. Their strategy is basically to, whilst they're still expanding it, not to put out a resource. We think, and from just listening to what they say in the market, is we're thinking probably third or fourth quarter this year they'll put out that initial resource. They've certainly published a drill program that they plan to do before that resource, which is down to about 600 metres. So we think that will come out third or fourth quarter. We think it'll be good. We like their project and we like ours, but we see it as it's definitely a continuum across that border. So now I can't speak for how much they've got, and you probably know better what the fund managers, whatever else, think they have, but it's certainly significant.
And just in the context of they're on a kind of a continual drill program. Can you just give me the what you drilled last year and what you're expecting to drill this year?
Well, last year up to the resource, we drilled about 28,000 metres into that. Since that, we've drilled about another 14,000 metres, but not just in the resource, elsewhere as well. So we expect to drill as much again as we drilled the first time, another 28, to get to our next resource. We think that resource will come out, well, we plan to have it out by the end of the second quarter. It will be downward extensions of the Oko Main Zone, which is high grade, but also we hope to put out an initial resource on the lower grade, disseminated style of mineralisation that we see down at Guyanese, which lies between Oko Main Zone and the Reunion Block, which continues up to what we have in Shear 1 in the Oko Main Zone, which we didn't include in the initial resource. So that's more of a tens of metres at grams as opposed to metres at tens of grams. So we want to keep those two separate, but we think we'll get both of those out by the end of the second quarter.
And how much more drilling is the Guyanese going to take? Because you've said about another 14,000 metres to... So 28,000 to get your first mineral resource estimate, and you estimate about the same, let's call it another 28 to 30,000 metres to get your second resource estimate. You've done another 14. Does that mean you've got another 14 to go, or 14 to 15, 16 to go before the end of the second quarter? Just by... Or am I trying to be too cute?
I think it's because we're at that exploration phase, and we've really just got the discovery at Guyanese happening. We're very reactive to the results, and there's no doubt about that. So if the results from Guyanese come back as positive as they've been, we'll certainly expand that, and we'll go very hard at those resources because they're at surface, and we want to drill probably more ounces and more meters. But it's we're not what would you say rigid on exactly where we're going to be drilling over the first half of the year, but for us, adding near surface ounces is more of a priority than deepening Oko Main Zone. We like to keep deepening Oko Main Zone, but basically near surface ounces, and that would be Guyanese or potentially to the north, will take more of the drilling if we have positive results.
And where are you in your cash position? Because you raised 13.5 million in June, and you've been drilling since then. What is that? What's your treasury like?
So we've got $9 million in the bank at the moment. We broke for Christmas, so we haven't been drilling for the last month, and we'll be back out there in February. Before Christmas, we ended up dumping 3,000 samples at the lab, so we've got a bit of a backlog there, and certainly it's the Guyanese drilling and the trenching at Guyanese. So as we get those results back, that will determine exactly where we're drilling and what our focus is.
Thank you. Sorry, there was a bit of an internet breakup there, so I missed a few bits. But just in terms of raising more capital, you put out a news release saying that you've done a kind of the shelf prospectus, so you can raise up to $50 million. You've got a new exploration manager or COO, and then in the form of Torben to let's call it take the exploration up a gear and get it more organised or more permanent. How many rigs do you have on site, and are you kind of looking to kind of gradually ratchet up the number of rigs and the meters that you do on a monthly basis, or are you going to just keep it at 1 or 2 rigs so that you can maintain that operational flexibility?
Well, we have 4 rigs at site. Generally availability probably about 75%. We are able to get more rigs if we need them, but also we have the ability to slow down as well. I mean, we're results driven. So as we get results, and if Guyanese it comes out as what we think it's going to be, we'll speed up, and then we'll also take breaks if we feel we need to catch up on the geology. So we're very flexible on that. If we keep going at the rate we're going at, our budget this year is $6 million, and we've got $9 million in the bank. If we feel that we need to speed up, I mean, my executive chairman has told me he could go to 10 or 12 if we have great success at Guinea. But we're flexible on that, right? So once again, results driven. We like to know what we're drilling before we drill it. You know, cost per ounce in exploration for the first 1.2 million ounces was $5 an ounce. We like to think we're not scattergun in our approach, but also when we actually get onto a coherent body, we like to think we can ramp up and drill it as quickly as possible. So we have that flexibility, and also obviously in the budget wise. So, you know, if we just keep grinding on at the rate we have, we've got $6 million budget for the year, we've got $9 million in the bank. If we feel the need to speed up, then we'll be opportunistic and we can go to the market if the market's there.
Yeah, good. Thank you. On your first resource and the shear hosted mineralization, it says carbonaceous shear hosted mineralization. I always get the fear. I always think on graphite and preg robbing and kind of low recoveries. Have you done any test work on that? And kind of what's the outcome, if any?
Okay, so we did a bottle roll test, and we did 6 of those with samples between 2 grams and 264 grams. The average recovery was 98%, the lowest being 94.5%, and that was from the lowest grade sample. So each of those samples generally had a 0.2 to 0.3 residual, and that was a variation in the recoveries. It was just ground to 100 microns, and it was only a 12-hour bottle roll, so we didn't, go forever. So very, very good recoveries. Coarse gold. The carbon is just carbon. It's not activated, so it hasn't been. It's only Guyanese species metamorphism, right? So we don't have any graphite in there. But that's a good question, right? Because when you get up to amphibolite fascies with shearing, you can get that graphite. We don't have graphite, which is a good thing to know when we got those leach samples. We haven't done any metallurgy on the disseminated style of mineralisation yet. We'd assume it's probably similar to what they have at Reunion, which is, I think, their average recoveries are 92 or something like that. So, we're pretty comfortable with the recoveries. We'll get into more detail metallurgy later this year. We haven't done any gravity, and we know we've got a lot of coarse gold in the main Oko Main Zone, and that could be for the production facility at a later date. That'll be important, but at the moment, really just good to know that it's amenable to cyanidation as it currently stands.
Yeah, I mean that's a critical factor. That if you can just show that it's kind of amenable to conventional processing with optionality around that, particularly on the gravity, that's fantastic. So you talk about the disseminated mineralization and the shear hosted mineralization in the Oko Main Zone. Tell me more about the difference between these two styles of mineralization and how they're so closely related geographically, and yet they seem to be treated in your mind as very different things, and also in the results as well. You're getting these narrow high grade and wider disseminated grades.
Okay, so back to the basin geology, I suppose. You start down the lower basin, your basalts, up through your andesites, through your sandstones, siltstones, and finally these carbonaceous sediments, which are then folded in the package. And so that they are adjacent to each other. So the sedimentary package sits on top of these mafic volcanics, which under Guyanese metamorphism has turned into an extremely magnetite-rich, brittle host rock, right? So that's that style that hosts the disseminated mineralization. The carbonaceous sediments and the contact of either the sandstones or the andesites with those carbonaceous sediments, you've got that ductile brittle contrast. You've had quartz veining form on those contacts, been deformed and later mineralized with very high grade mineralization. So the thinking out there is that within the carbonaceous sediments, you generate a methane-rich fluid, which makes the gold bisulfide complex stable. And so as it travels, and it can travel from tens to hundreds of kilometers to its final trap, it's stable. When it cuts across those quartz veins, you change the chemistry and it drops out almost catastrophically. So you get these laminations of silica carbon and visible gold dropping out, and you get these great grades over relatively narrow veins, up 0.5 metre to 14 metres at the Oko Main Zone. Now, as you come across to the unit adjacent to that, which is this magnetite-rich metamorphic rock, where it's been highly strained to get laminations or foliations of magnetite, and it behaves almost like a banded iron formation when you pass the fluids through there with shearing. You do get centimetre scale veining, and you still get some visible gold, but you also get the fluids passing out through the more brittle host rock there. When the fluids come in contact with the magnetite iron oxide, so your iron's accessible, so your gold bisulfide complex, the sulfides are attached to the iron, form pyrite, replacing the magnetite, and the gold drops out. And it's more of a gentle deposition as opposed to the more violent thing that you see in the carbonaceous sediments. But they're adjacent to each other, so it's the same fluids in the same system at the same time, different chemical trap.
So it's the fluid passes through and reaches two different rock types which are all next to each other, and one has a chemical trap which activates it very strongly and causes a high grade close deposition, so it's all deposed in the same place, which is where you get the narrow zones. But there's a weaker chemical trap or a chemical effect in the magnetite rich, which is the replacement of the magnetite with a pyrite and associated gold. Does that mean that the gold is locked up in the pyrite?
Not necessarily, and certainly at the reunion block it doesn't appear to be. But that's why I think the difference in the recoveries you see in their metallurgies at 94 as opposed to our 98, they have as low as 84. So there is that potential that some of the gold is tied up in the pyrites, but commonly not in banded iron formation systems, and it doesn't appear to be so here yet.
And it can you can conventional processing would suggest that you can grind that down to whatever it is, 85 microns or 85% passing 100 microns or 60 microns or whatever the grain size is, and then you can leach it from the pyrite.
Exactly. So I mean, it's once again it's rather conventional metallurgy, so it shouldn't be problematic.
And have you got a handle on how to target within? I mean, you've got 17 kilometers of strike along here. Have you got a handle on how to target? What's your success rate on drilling? Have you managed to vector in on what your favourite zones are yet? Yeah,
I mean, historically, we were exploring in the carbonaceous sediments because that's where all the known mineralisation was. So we were really following up on artisanal mining areas. So that's why we found the Oko Main Zone, and that's what we were exploring for. We can find those carbonaceous sediments under cover using VLF. It works very well, ground VLF. Now that we've seen that we've got mineralisation in extremely magnetic metamorphic rock, we've been doing ground mag out there, which has allowed us to define the magnetic bodies. So, and which is this magnetic metamorphic. So, and where we have the main shear zone cutting across that metamorphic, that's where we get the disseminated style of mineralisation. So, as we come around our regional fold, which has an axial plane to the northeast, now at the Oko Main Zone, the bedding of the stratigraphy is almost parallel to that shearing. So we get that long zone, 900 metres of mineralisation. As we come down to Guiana, we start to come around the fold. So the stratigraphy is oblique to that main shear. So we go through a magnetite-rich metamorphic, then we come back into andesites and sandstones, which is poorly mineralised, and then we go back into another band of this metamorphic rock, which is mineralised again. So basically, we're starting to see an oblique relationship there. So we can find that with the magnetics, and it was actually the ground mag that enlightened us about where to drill down at Guiana. So I mean, basically, so as we now take that further to the northwest, and we'll take it up to Aremu as well, we can start to map out one, our high magnetic unit, and two, with the VLF, the carbonaceous sediments.
Because if you're looking back through some of your old news releases, there are a few dusters and a few holes, and I think you drilled a number of holes in Guiana and missed with several of them.
When we picked up the Guiana area directly after our discovery at Oko, that area was between us and Reunion. It was covered in old workings and tailings, and we just kept drilling straight south. And there's an inflection in the main shear there, and there's been a diorite in place along the shear. So we drilled 3 holes directly into that barren diorite, Then we drilled further to the east out in sediments which were poorly mineralized, and we did actually only one hole hit the style of mineralization which we are now drilling. It was 10 meters, 2.5 grams. So that was back in 2020.
And was
You know,
that through
post
the
that
diorite into the magnetite? Was that to the west of the diorite?
it was to the west of the no, it was to the west of the magnetic rich host rock. So there's a diorite on the western margin of the main shear, which they see down at Reunion as well. It can be weakly mineralized in some places, but basically it's a later intrusive, and it's barren. So we got a bit unlucky with that, but we've done the ground mag out there, and it showed us where the magnetite rich unit was, and so we just had to step back to the east a little bit, and then also be within that north-south zone where the that stratigraphic unit is. So, and it's worked well. So a nice bit of geology, but it shows you sometimes when you're drilling blind, you can miss these things fairly easily.
Yeah, absolutely. And has the ground mag has it enabled you to retrofit your exploration model? I mean, can you now see why you drilled there, and do you think it's going to help you vector towards mineralization going forward?
Absolutely, and there's no doubt about that. So it certainly has guided us on our drilling at Guiana and where we're doing our trenches and focusing our soils. Then also to the north of the Oko Main Zone, where we go through that fold closure, that regional fold, we see up there really tightly folded magnetic unit, which we believe is the same unit. It has been heavily worked historically, so we don't have any outcropping rocks there, but the underlying owner, Michael Vieira, says he pulled 54,000 ounces out of there in the early 2000s. So we're up there, we're auguring through this shallow tailings, about 3 meters down the saprolite. We're doing that as basically on a 100-meter grid. We'll probably try and get in there with an excavator and get some exposure, but we will drill that, and basically we have high hopes that we'll get that same style of mineralization in that fold closure.
Sorry, so where is that? Is that North Guyanese, did you say?
That's north of the Oko Main Zone. We call it the bird cage.
Okay.
And in that big regional fold that we have, it's right in the inflection there, and you can see the creeks either side of it on our presentation. Are heavily worked, and they're basically paralleling, or they are the actual plane of that fold.
And so those targets kind of came to surface as a combination of the ground mag with with what you've learned and following the artisanal. So it's kind of you've developed your vectoring system to create these new targets, birdcage and sands.
Exactly, and like I say, the artisanals are probably our geochemistry. So you say they destroy your geochemistry, but they've sort of already done it, right? So they take you there, then you do your geophysics, and then you try and map as much as you can. And then obviously it's sands. They've got a pit going there where they've dug into it, so that's not hard. We actually know where the mineralization is, and so we'll be able to drill that. At certainly at birdcage, there isn't any outcrop directly over the area of interest, so we'll do our best to target in. We'll really tighten up the mag there and probably do it as a grid and try and pick those tight fold closures. And we just have to drill it and see. I mean, you run the risk of drilling dusters, but I mean, at the end of the day, we just have to see what's there.
Good. Next question is Ghani. What's the footprint of it? I mean, because I think investors would really like to know the relative footprint of your that style of mineralization to what Reunion have got. I mean, it's obvious, really. Their market cap is 3 times yours, and I think investors will be looking for some kind of size clue to see if they can kind of infer a read across.
Okay, so the strike of what we call Ghani on the main shear is 900 meters. From the top of Oko Main all the way down, that shear is 2.2 kilometers. But so the main shear is at Ghani, what we call, it's 900 meters long. It's always mineralized, 10 to 20 meters, 1 to 2 grams for sure. But in certain areas, and certainly at the Ghani North, we've got a 450 meter by 200 meter wide soil anomaly, which we've trenched, and we've intersected quartz veining, which we pan gold out of in a number of those trenches. So we think they're parallel shears, which will most likely have lower grade disseminated mineralization between them. So that's the scale of that northern anomaly. In the central area there, it's underneath a pit, which is about 300 meters long, and that's where we got 50 meters at 1.7 grams. So obviously a 50 meter thickness, true thickness, we call it 40, and about 300 meters long. And then down on the border with Reunion, which they call Block 1, and for want of a better name, we can call it that, we're back into the carbonaceous sediments there, and we've drilled one hole historically, which had, I think it was 17 metres at 1.9 grams and 1 metre at 16 grams. So there's 3 areas along that, so 3 distinct different bodies with barren material in between it. But the northern one appears to be quite the largest, 400 metres by 200.
Yeah, gotcha. Great, thank you. That's really helpful. What's your there's so much going on, it's really quite hard to get your head around it. Presumably you've got, if I could simplify it down to 3 things, is continuing to drill out the Oko Main Zone, including depth extensions, and the question is how deep do you go and how much do you spend on that? Then there's Guyanese, how much you put into this in this kind of southern 900 meters, and how much of your drill budget that you were looking at, you're looking at of the $6 million drill budget, how much of that gets devoted to Guyanese, and how much gets devoted to birdcage, sands, other targets along the 17 kilometers strike shear zone?
That's a very good question, and we discuss that commonly internally. Obviously, the easy thing and the thing we like doing is drilling high grade at Oko Main Zone, but that's as far as value add. In the short term, it's probably not the greatest value add. The real value add here is to find other deposits nearby, such as Guyanese, and we did that at the end of last year, and we did drill dusters out at Oko West and to the north of Oko Main. So I mean, you run the risk of wasting meters, you can call it, but maybe not, and to make these other discoveries. And really, that's the near surface ounces what changes the scope of the project. At Oko Main, we can keep going deeper, but at the end of the day, on those 3 shears, with the geometry that we have, you can see 100 to 120,000 ounces a year, and drilling deeper adds ounces, but just adds mine life. It doesn't necessarily affect your NPV today. Finding new deposits near surface like Guyanese does change that, and especially that disseminated style of mineralisation where you can look at it and say, okay, we can get a lot more ounces out per annum out of that than you can get out of an underground operation. And so for us, the discovery at Guyanese is becoming very much a focus, and so if we can expand that out quickly, we'd do that, knowing that the end game here is probably somewhere down the road, a combination with the Oko West project of Reunion. But also then we don't want to forget long strike, your bird cage, your sands, new discoveries again, just like Guyanese, will add to the quantum. So, they're always riskier, but the rewards are greater. And so we see from Oko Main through Guyanese through more exploration, you see the rewards greater, but the risk greater as well. And there's a balancing act there, and we're not here forever. So we see over the next 12 months that we want to continue with all of those. And obviously, a new discovery would be the greatest thing.
Good. So many irons in the fire. Just remind me of the timing of your target to get a new mineral resource out. And did you say that you're going to do a resource update for Oko Main Zone and for Guyanese, or are you going to at the same time, or are you going to do one and then the other?
No, we'd like to do them both at the same time. So we're targeting the end of second quarter. Obviously, Oko Main Zone, we're going to keep that discrete as a high-grade vein deposit, and because that's exactly what it is. And then for the more disseminated style of mineralisation that we see at Guyanese and also Shear 1, we'd like to combine that into a lower-grade resource, and we'd like to keep those two things distinct from each other because they are certainly different beasts. And so we'd have both of those out at the end of the second quarter.
So you'll do one mineral resource update, an MRE2, mineral resource estimate 2, and it will have a higher grade, or a narrow vein component, which is more suitable to underground mining, and an open pitable bulk tonnage section, which will include some tonnage from Oko Main Zone, but presumably the larger amount from Guyanese.
Exactly, and so we'll have to see how we do that 43-101, but I'm pretty sure you can keep them as separate bodies. And the last thing you want to do is blend them together, just end up with a mess, right? So I'm sure that's not the message we want to send. We want to have two distinct bodies, and we want to have two distinct mineral resources.
And your kind of end goal here is you're trying to establish the potential envelope sizes of the entire land package, isn't it?
Exactly. I mean, basically, the goal of if you work for a major company, your boss will say, okay, what's the big picture here? How many ounces have we got? What sort of mine are we going to build? What capacity do we need at the mill? And so we're no different in that regard. I mean, basically, we need to show what's the potential size here, what are the styles of mineralization, how does it all fit together. So we're not about drilling off to indicated in any of these things. We're trying to find as many inferred ounces as we can to show the scope of it, so people can look at it and say, here's what it looks like at the end of the day. And I'm sure people also say, if you stuck that with the Reunion, here's what it looks like. And at the end of the day, it's starting to look pretty big. I mean, from the south of Reunion's drilling to the north of Oko Main Zone is 4.2 kilometres. So there's definitely something coming together here, which is quite large. So, I mean, that is the end game. We all get that. And so our job at the moment is to define as many ounces as we can, as quickly as we can.
Good. Well, keep the drill, baby, drill is all I can say. Keep those results coming. And I look forward to catching up with you in due course, either when there's something spectacular that's coming out of the woodwork. I mean, if you're hanging together news release after news release of good stuff, it'd be good to get an update. But I'd certainly like to catch up with you after that mineral resource estimate comes out in mid-year.
Okay, excellent, Mel. Thanks for having me today.